Thanks for joining me this episode. I Yesterday I did my video for my other channel. Actually, I put two of them up for my other channel, and it requires some shaving. And so sorry, I had waited a little while to do this video, but I'm really anxious and really excited to be able to share with you Dramatica, how to go through a how Dramatica works to analyze. Blah, 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 blah. You won't talk. Maybe I feel like I'm talking over your head. Dramatica mimics the mind, figuring out a problem, and it projects all sorts of different features about a movie or about a story. And I'll tell you in a little while. I want to get something out, but I want to tell you how I became interested in Dramatica, but primarily I want to take you through the movie Jaws, and I want to analyze it using Dramatica and demonstrate exactly how it works. I'll be going like this as a signal to myself to to cut this video and edit in screenshots of the Dramatica story engine and screen, because it's a software as well. It's a low key piece of technology. I don't have that much sophisticated technology available. Okay, how I got into Dramatica. I'm a storyteller. I'm a screenwriter. I want to become a professional screenwriter. I had been writing stories and scripts for television, trying to get them. Sorry if I do this. I'm just the glue and so forth from yesterday. Anyway, I had been writing teleplays. That's actual script, character name, and then dialogue and scene direction and so forth. And that's what I wanted to be professionally. So sometime towards the end of college, I wanted to impress Madonna, so I thought of a movie idea and tried to write one that's well constructed to impress her, not only to impress her, but to have it flow well and to beat out the competition. I'll just throw out the term millions of other screenwriters who are also trying to get the attention of producers and so forth to greenlight their project. Okay, so there's a stiff competition. There's a great a celebrity that I want to impress. So I wrote a screenplay and I sent it to CAA, Creative Artists Agency, which is like the New York Yankees of talent representation. And so they sent it back and said something like in a letter that they weren't interested in it. I still have the letter. Okay, so I want to get to talking about Dramatica. All right, so that was about year 2000, and then for like 11 years, 11 and a half years, I was struggling trying to figure out how movie structure worked, because if I could put all these different ideas that I had constructed into a well-told story, it wouldn't go over people's heads. It wouldn't seem crowded. The audiences wouldn't get lost. It would just flow very nicely. And that was paramount. That was primarily on my mind. Paramount, haha, no pun intended. That was primarily on my mind. And then I discovered this blog online by Jim Hull. He is an enthusiast of Dramatica. I'll tell you from my personal perspective how I discovered Dramatica. I was searching for articles about the movie Inception. Inception with I think it's Leonardo DiCaprio, and because I had found that there were nuances and themes that seemed similar to what I was trying to tell in my story. The theme in my story was very straightforward, very, very clear, crystal clear. It was just a matter of finding a plot to put it towards, because I had my relationship story, which is Madonna and this guy, Joe, uh, forming a relationship. She's a celebrity and he's a nobody, and could that really work? And themes about misunderstanding and illusion and what's underneath the surface, and what's truly in your heart and soul and so forth, and Kabbalistic themes and so forth. So I found Inception seemed like that. So this guy, Jim Hall, in his blog, he was talking about how Dramatica, this theory of Dramatica that I had never heard about, um, it wasn't subjective. It was a program software, and it could calculate what the character's problem was, what the solution was, what the symptom was, what the themes were. And Jim Hall in these blogs would say how well some of these movies did them, and also how well Dramatica could be able to predict what the themes were, um, and how the characters felt, so forth. All these different elements of a movie. So I figured that would be great. I needed some kind of way of honing in on a specific theme, or honing all these different ideas I wanted to put into the movie into something straightforward. I wanted it to flow very well. So I just knew about this blog, and that was maybe, it was like spring 2012, and so from the notes that he gave, from the description of Dramatica, from the theory, I was able to figure out some of what was involved. Now, there was also a forum of other users talking about and asking questions about how the theory works. So it wasn't long before I got the actual software itself, and I learned the theory. And then that was in 2012, and then for the next quite a few years, it took like maybe 5 years, something like that, just to understand the theory well. That doesn't say that, that's not to say that the theory is very complex. Quite the contrary. Actually, I knew instinctively some aspects of movie making or movie structure that Dramatica was explaining. What the theory explains why these things are in movies, why certain tropes are in movies, why you tend to have a relationship with a kind of overall story alongside it. So they weren't just tropes anymore. Dramatica was actually calculating, the theory was actually illustrating for you what, why is it like this? Why do these things, why does your creative mind instinctively do it in this way or that way? All right. So I understand it well. Now, how does Dramatica work? Well, there's several answers to this. One, there's a theory. Two, there's a computer program that lets you calculate the themes the themes and the other aspects that would be projected in a movie that you want to tell. And then there's also monthly meetings where hosted by one of the two co-founders. Usually it's Chris Huntley. These I found on YouTube, probably from Jim Hall's blog. He probably mentions that, but on YouTube it's under Jim Hall, There's several gym halls. Find the one that's kind of like in a circular shape, but it has four quadrants. It's sort of like a circle, but it's like four black quadrants. Uh, that's the channel, and it's simply several people. It's in Los Angeles. It's hosted usually by Chris Huntley. Several people gather together and they watch a movie and they answer like 9 or 12 questions, and then he puts it on a board. He asks stuff that this is what I will be guiding through with you, so you can understand how Dramatica works. It's not that complicated a theory. There are like four main character questions and four objective story questions, and then like four spots where you can narrow down the theme that you want. So he goes through these, and then they put it into the software, and the software calculates and comes up with like 70 something different aspects of this movie that they have just watched. And Chris goes through trying to identify how this value that the software calculated applies to the movie that they've watched. And it's not willy-nilly. That's what I really enjoyed about it. So you can enjoy this as a consumer of movies to let you understand movie structure better. You can also enjoy it. You can also benefit from it as a writer, because it would help you, as it did with me, help you hone in and take and remove, excise out the ideas that were in your head that may be good for another movie but wouldn't be perhaps counterproductive if they were left into this message that you want to tell. Primarily, Dramatica works on the premise that you as a writer have an argument to tell. You have a point of view to express. It's like the expression, what's the moral of the story? You want to ultimately end up with a message saying maybe something like, if you put order in your life, you can have a better love life, or something or other. So that introduction having been said, I will take you into showing this this story form for Jaws. Now, I picked Jaws for two reasons. One, a lot of people are familiar with it already; they've seen it. Number two, it's easy to explain, and three, it's pretty straightforward. There's I think he's a police chief, um, Brody, who has not lived in this island resort area, this beach area. He's a mainlander, so he's not used to living near water. So he and his wife and I think it's two kids move into this town named Amity. I almost said Amityville. Amity, which relates to friendship. And so there's this shark that attacks a native, and then there's this threat about about the shark chomping on other people who are there. And the mayor, he wants to do something about it. He wants to close the beach down, and that gets the ire of the mayor, who is afraid that if nobody will be coming to the beach, then the businesses that rely heavily on these beachgoers and visitors, these tourists, will suffer, because everybody will be afraid of the shark and nobody will be coming to the beach. So that's one problem. And then you've got the shark being the other problem. All right, so Dramatica. So I should mention this other thing. Dramatica has what's called a periodic table. It has 4 levels, and if you're looking down on the top level, you see 4 quadrants: an upper left, upper right, lower right. And I'll try to show you what that top level looks like right there. So then in the level below that, that's most related, most relatable to genre. Um, when you're watching a movie, people argue, well, is it a character-driven story or is it a plot-driven story, or whatever? All 4 levels should be in a well-told story. It's just that you rely on certain aspects of one over the other. So people argue, like, is plot more important than character, or is theme more important than plot? They're all important. It's just a matter of how much you illustrate in your story. So the top level is most related to genre. The next level is most related to plot. The next level down is most related to theme. And then the bottom level is most related to character. And there are all sorts of specific reasons why they're in that order, and the reasons all interrelate. It's much more of a science. That's what I really appreciated about Dramatica. I won't get into that now. I want to keep it very simple because it's very exciting for me to share. I'm very passionate about it, and I also want people to understand it. I want people to appreciate it. It's not only about movies, but it's about psychology. I had read all sorts of books about screenwriting, and I tried to write a screenplay, and there was no science behind screenwriting. It was just people just gibber jabbering, to be frank. So I knew all the basics, but I didn't have any guidance in terms of organizing a structure, and this does. Okay, so all right. So for every you start the top unit, 1 unit down. Each of the 4 units, each unit down itself has in the next level 4 other units, and then each of those in the next level down beneath that has 4 more. So you start with 4, and then it's what would it be like? Well, you get 4, and then 16, something like that, and then 16 times 4, whatever that, and then whatever that is times 4 at the bottom row. All right. So let's get to the exciting part. Let's get into analyzing JAWS. Okay, so I'll show that story form again. All right, so this story form is what's been calculated when you put all the, you choose 8 different values, and then it calculates all this. And this isn't even all of it. Let's start with the main character for binary questions. You have main character resolve, main character growth, main character approach, and main character mental sex. I'll explain each of these. Now, main character resolve can either be change or steadfast. You may, as you're watching me explain this, you may catch on to things that you're familiar with when watching movies, but people get these things all screwed up and confused. It's why I like this theory so much. Resolve is about whether a character stays with his or her current way of dealing with his personal conflict, or not. There's change and they're steadfast. Each of the four through lines, let me explain what a through line is. I should have done that before going into this, actually. There are four through lines, and each of the four must be matched with each of the units in the top level. And then they go down. I'll get to that. There's the main character perspective, or I'll just call them through lines. Main character through line, the impact character through line, the objective story through line, and the the main character through line, the impact character through line, the objective story through line, and the subjective story through line. The main character through line is not about the entire picture. So in this case, I'll be referring back to Jaws. In this case, it's not about the shark attacking people. That's the objective story. The main character through line is simply about Chief Brody dealing with this fear of the water. Now, he has found a way of dealing with it. In fact, at one point he says, it's not a concern if you see yourself on land. I can't remember exactly how he puts it, but from the point of view of land, it's not a problem. So he's dealing with that problem. And then there's an impact character through line. The impact character represents this other character, and this is where it really deals with psychology, this other character that you, as the audience, as the main character, you've bonded with Chief Brody. You see this other person. You're not getting into the mind. You're not bonding as much with this other character. Could be several characters. As long as they argue the same, or they embody the same argument. What's the argument? They are employing a different way of dealing with a problem that's similar to yours. They dealt with it differently. So in Jaws, it's a handoff, what's called a handoff. It's, let me see, it's the mayor, it's Hooper, and it's Quint. It's, in that sense, it's a little unclear for new people to Dramatica to understand. You can also go to Star Wars. The impact character would be Obi-Wan Kenobi or Ben Kenobi to Luke. Luke would be the main character. Obi-Wan clearly shows a different way of approaching personal problems. And you can see it in Rocky. Rocky is clearly the main character. You bond with Rocky, and you view the whole film through Rocky's eyes. You've bonded very much with Rocky. You know Rocky's problem and conflicts and so forth. The impact character is, what's her name? I'm blanking on her name. Anyway, Adrian. It's Adrian. Adrian isn't chiefly about or involved with this objective story about boxing and trying to hold out in a match with the champion boxer. That's the objective story. The impact character is Adrian, and she has some problems she's dealing with. You're not looking into her character as much as you are with Rocky. You're just viewing her and observing her dealing with her conflict. And that's informing you. That's asking you, should I, as the main character, change how I deal with my problem, or should I remain steadfast and continue dealing with it the way I have been? You don't know whether that will come out to be, make you feel good or help you resolve your problem at the end or not. So I hope that helps you understand main character resolve, change, or steadfast. And of course, if you're a change character, as Chief Brody was, it would happen at the end of the story during the climax, usually tied in with the objective story, where he resolves his personal problem and the objective problem simultaneously with an act. Uh, Remember, at the end of Jaws, well, let me mention in Star Wars, Luke Skywalker is very competitive, and although he's training in the Force, he has to undo this problem. If I remember correctly, I think his problem is pursuit. I'm not sure, but he in order to overcome it, he's in his X-wing fighter, and he has to believe in the Force. He hears Obi-Wan Kenobi telling him, "Trust yourself." Oh, no, 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 no. I remember his problem, as calculated by Dramatica. His problem is test, although he wouldn't realize it himself. There's something called symptom, which I'll get to later, but in Dramatica. But he focuses on his symptom, and he doesn't recognize his actual problem, which is he's constantly testing himself. He's testing himself against other people, and so in the this periodic table, if you see the diagonal unit to test is trust. Of course, the symptom is in that same group of four, but it's adjacent to either trust or test. All right, I won't get into that, but so in the climax, Luke hears Obi-Wan Kenobi say, "Trust your feelings, use the Force, Luke." So he shuts off his computer and the computer targeting system, and then he trusts in the Force, and he's able to make the shot and blow up the Death Star. Now, in here, let me see what the main character's problem is: avoid. That works out well. Chief Brody is avoiding the water, and the opposite of avoid, which would be his solution, is pursuit. So, as a change character, in the end, according to this dramatic story form calculation, he should be switching from avoid to pursuit. And that's exactly what happens. He's in the water, and he's scared of the water. He's in the water, he's on the boat that's sinking, and the shark is approaching him. He has his rifle, and he's now he's not avoiding the water anymore. He's actually dealing with it, and he actually pursues killing the shark, which also resolves the objective story problem. Now, there are several algorithms that you can do in your head. You just remember these are guidelines on how to work through the theory in your head, some of the theory in your head. If a main character's resolve is change, then his problem unit, in this case, the problem unit is avoid, will match the objective story problem unit. As I said before, each of the four different through lines has its own value. You start at the top and you identify for that particular through line which of the four it would be assigned to, and then from there down you pick which unit in that certain of the four beneath that unit is the primary concern, and then beneath that unit down would be four other ones, and you pick of which one, or the calculations pick which one of those four would be the theme, and then that below that unit you have another set of four at the bottom level, and one of them would be the problem, the one diagonal to it would be the solution, and then the one either horizontally adjacent to it or vertically adjacent to it, depending on certain algorithms, would be the which some. It's hard to explain, but I can understand easily just by looking at it. I don't need computer calculations um, to understand which one, whether it's adjacent, vertically adjacent, or horizontally adjacent. Uh, but anyway, you have the problem, solution, and then whichever one vertically or horizontally adjacent to it is the symptom, and the opposite one, which would be diagonally across from it, would be the response to that symptom. It's technical. I can do it in my head. You can do it in your head, but I don't want to bog this down because that. Well, anyway, later on, when I get to approach be or doer, that's when that calculate, horizontal or vertical really makes a difference. These aren't just labels arbitrarily stuck in. Uh, it takes a lot to explain, but just trust me, these aren't just labels just thrown in. It's very well organized, and in fact, there are 4 levels, and the human mind is capable of keeping intact um, about 5 to 7 different things, 5 to 7 different numbers, or 5 to 7 different values at one time before it spills or before it reaches capacity. And that's another indication that uh, that there are just 4 levels. There are other reasons for this too, but right. So let's just go right through the main character, 4 main character questions. I've explained resolution, change or steadfast. At the end, Brody has changed because he switched from avoid to pursuit. And also gradually over the course of the movie, he is shifting from avoid to pursuit. And steadfast would mean that he could waver between uh, avoid and pursuit. However, at the end, he remains with avoid. That's not in this case. That's not the case here because he's a changed character. But steadfast would be feeling the pressure from the impact character to change, but his steadfastness not to change and to keep doing it the way he has been dealing with this problem makes an impact on the impact character, forcing the impact character to change. One of them will change and the other one will remain steadfast. That's part of your um, your methodology in that's basically what's required for you to illustrate your message well in your story. It illustrates which one of them changed and for what reason. All right, now growth. That's the next one. It's either start or stop. It depends a little bit on whether it's a change or steadfast character. Um, start. If you think about it visually, if you look at it, you see the main character in the objective story placed somewhere in this. Remember that top level. The objective story and the main character are assigned to specific units. Now, just by logic alone, you can't have. Well, by this certain thing, I'll tell you in a moment. You can't have the objective story directly diagonal to the main character. You just simply can't. Uh, it's something very simple. The main character through line and the impact character through line must be assigned to diagonally. They must have a diagonal relationship. They must be assigned to units at that top level that are diagonal to each other. And so, same idea, the subjective story through line and the objective story through line must also be assigned to diagonal pairs. And it's basically for reasons of contrast, compare and contrast. So I won't get into it further, but so you can see why logically the main character can't be in a diagonal relationship to the objective story. So it must be either vertically adjacent or horizontally adjacent. Now, start would mean that they are in a vertical relationship. In other words, the objective story would be on one of the lower, if you're looking at it from bird's eye view above, the objective story would be in one of these two or one of these top two. Then the main character the through line must occupy one of the two here. In other words, they have to be like this. They can't be next to each other like that. So start, this is a way that I remember which one is start and which one is stop. Start means that either the main character or the objective story has to go either this way or move down this way. Which one has to move toward the other one so that you have a resolution, you have calmness. You have to start, something has to start happening, either in the main character or in the objective story. Now, it depends on other factors. It depends on whether I think it depends also on whether the resolution to the story, whether the story turns out as a success or failure, and main character is in a good place at the end or in a bad place. These are all calculate. See, that's why that's why you need the software to be able to calculate things from different perspectives, calculate all these different things simultaneously, which is more than one person could do in his head. So I think if it turns out in a good place, it turns out to be a success, whichever is steadfast, the impact character or the main character, if the main character remains steadfast and it's a start story, that means that the objective story must start having something happening to work up towards success, to align with the main character already being in a good place. I hope I worded that well. And if the main character is a change character, then that means that the start has to be on the main character. Something has to start happening within the main character, resolving his or her own personal conflict to work up to the objective story. Okay, and for the whole story, the whole movie itself, to resolve itself. I hope that's clear. In other words, something has to start happening or start happening to work its way toward the other. Now, I'll give you some examples. Well, actually, I'll go back to Jaws. So in this case, Chief Brody is a start change character, and it turns out a success. And not only is the objective story successful, the shark is killed and removed, of course, until the sequel comes along. But the shark is killed, blown to bits, and the main character is in a good, happy mindset at the end. There are two different factors. I'll get to that soon in the next portion, the objective story 4 questions. So we can tell he has changed. He is no longer scared of the beach. Remember, near the beginning, when the beachgoers go into the ocean, he just stands by on the sand, and he never goes into the water. And he talks sometimes about his fear of the water. So over time, about the second half, as the second half of the movie kicks in, he's now in a boat with Hooper, and he's going a little bit further into the water. And then in the third act, he's in a boat with Hooper and with Quint. And so he's ventured a little bit further, so he's not avoiding it so much. It's a gradual process, so that by the end, in the climax, he's actually pursuing the shark with the rifle. And also, over the course of it, he's also pursuing, he's going further in towards where the shark is. He's not avoiding the water so much. So the next part is the next question is approach, main character approach, beer or doer. Um, this is people in society get this all weird. Beer, don't be a beer, be a doer or whatever. No, there are benefits and drawbacks to each one. What is a beer? Well, remember that that contest between the objective story and the main character that I talked about before. This whole Dramatica thing is really, some level, which one is less screwed up? They're all twisted. You can't go through life without having certain beliefs about other people or certain prejudices about things, situations, just because you've had previous experience. It would take so long just to come fresh. I mean, I don't think you really can come into any situation literally fresh. You have preconceived notions. Prejudice takes on certain connotations. I don't want to get into that bigotry, certain connotations. I'll just say preconceived notions. So through life experience, I'm doing this because literally that's what the periodic table is. It's actually a coiling, much like DNA. Each unit is gets a little complicated. Each of the 4 units, and then the next level, each of the 4 units, and then each of the 4 units, and then each of the 4 units, and it's working its way through. That's literally what the mind is doing, according to this Dramatica theory. So I won't get into that. But basically, imagine it being coiled up, that it's not like really a box of three-dimensional cube. It's more like 4 strands that are coiled and coiled and coiled upon themselves. So which one is more twisted up, the objective story or the main character through line? The one that's doubly twisted must be untwisted to align with the other one. So that's what you're really trying to do. You're trying to untwist by problem solving or resolving the conflict, either in the main character or objective story, or all 4 through lines. You're trying to untwist what's twisted too much. So approach, doer or beer. Put very simply, this again is a main character question. A beer instinctively adjusts himself mentally to deal with his conflict, and a doer prefers to deal with this conflict physically by changing the rest of the environment. It's basically you change or the environment changes. You as the main character changes, or I won't get into that, but either you adjust yourself mentally or you try and change the physical environment around you. Now, there are several examples of good, effective beers. In Ghostbusters, Bill Murray's character, Peter Venkman, is a very effective beer. In fact, he's so effective that before I watched the videos, I was eagerly awaiting their analysis on YouTube of Ghostbusters, which you can find on YouTube. I saw him something of a doer, because he just seemed to be very active and seemed to have a lot of focus on himself. But actually, he's a very effective, good example of a beer. He doesn't really do much around him. He's one aspect of a beer is that they're manipulative psychologically. They don't do much physically. They adjust themselves. One example is where he's meeting Dana at her apartment. He opens the door. She's become possessed, and she asks, "Are you the keymaster?" And he says, "No," and the door is shut. And so he knocks again, and she asks, "Are you the keymaster?" And he says, "Yes. Actually, he told me to meet you here." So immediately he adjusted himself psychologically to pretend to be whatever was demanded of him from the outside environment. They're good at acting, they're good at pretending or playing a role. It's like a lot like role playing. So Peter Venkman role plays. Remember in the beginning of Ghostbusters, it's all his introductory scene. It's all about role playing. He is hitting on. There's a test where he's giving electric shocks between a man, a male college student and a female college student. He's clearly attracted to the female college student, so he keeps giving shocks to the male college student. He lies about what she's giving predictive answers. He's testing her ESP ability and ability to read his mind, and he's putting up cards and she gives answers that are clearly false, but yet he keeps buttering her up. He's very manipulative, and so the male student leaves. He goes over to her and he wants to hit on her, clearly. It's a great comedy. Ghostbusters is a great comedy. And so she says, he says, I want to meet you to discuss your abilities more, and something like that. And then she says, well, how about 8 o'clock? And then he clearly he's lying for ulterior reasons. He says, I was just about to say 8 o'clock. You're a legitimate phenomenon. So he's buttering her up, and I doubt that he actually had 8 o'clock in his mind, but he's just lying, and he's just altering himself, how he comes across, in order to adapt to the environment, which is her deciding on 8 o'clock. I hope that's a good example. Now now let's go back to Jaws. He's a beer. Off the top of my head, I can't think of specific examples of him being a beer, although he doesn't do very much. He doesn't put up much of a push against the mayor, who disagrees with his decisions about closing the beach. Now, there's a warning about this. Oftentimes, especially in film, a weak doer can be confused for a beer. Don't confuse that with low energy versus high energy. You can have a very high energy, like in the case with Peter Venkman, a high energy beer who very actively adjusts himself and lies and takes on roles and pretends to be something he's not. And somewhere in the movie, I think he pretends to not have a college degree, but something about pretending to be something he's. The dean calls him out, "You're poor scientist, Dr. Venkman," so forth. And it's almost like he's pretending to be a scientist when he's really not a scientist. And especially early on, he doesn't seem to relate as much to the Ghostbusters goal. Egon is very much a scientist who is trying to develop scientific equipment to be able to catch ghosts and to detect ghosts. And Dan Aykroyd is very involved, like he's the heart of the Ghostbusters, as Peter put it towards the end of the movie. He's very actively involved, believes in the cause of the Ghostbusters, and Peter is just questioning why are you going through all this? It's almost like he's asking himself, why do I even bother going? What do I see in this group? Why am I with these people? Okay, so anyway, back to Chief Brody. He's a beer. Okay, so wait a minute. I'll go back. So that's a high energy beer. A high energy doer, of course, we've all seen. I guess that would be like any typical action movie hero. All right, so I hope that's clear. I can't think of very many examples off the top of my head of Chief Brody being a beer, except for the fact that he doesn't push back against the mayor. Um, the mayor wants to make sure that I think it's 4th of July celebration, and it's going to be he wants the beaches open, and Chief Brody just goes along with it. And there are other instances where the mayor says, "No, we're going to do it my way," and Chief Brody just goes along with it. And there's a moment in the conference near the after the shark. There's a town council meeting. Their townspeople are in, and one of them asks, "Are you going to close the beaches?" And the mayor says, "Oh no." Then he says, "Yes, we are going to close the beach." And then the mayor says, "Only for 24 hours or 48 hours or something like that." And then there's a glance by Chief Brody, like, "What?" And he even says, "I didn't agree to that." But he doesn't push back. I can think of a concrete example. He doesn't push back against what the mayor's sudden announcement was. There's another example. Um, the second victim is a child, and so later on in the movie, they're outside, and the clearly the child's parents are there. I mean, you see a woman and a man. Uh, the woman, I don't remember about the man, but the woman is all dressed in black, clearly mourning, and she's clearly the mother. Oh, she says, "My son." I think she says, "My son." She goes up to him um, and mentions, "You were the one who you kept the beaches open even after that first death of Chrissy, the beginning of the movie." And I don't think he even nods. He just goes like, "Uh huh," and then she slaps him hard, and he doesn't fight back. He doesn't do anything. He just accepts it. Oh, this person's mad at me, and for a moment he's more worried about her being mad at him than anything else, or making any effort to argue his point of view or whatever. Um, and I guess that would be one good example of him being a beer rather than a doer. All right. So the final one in these four main character questions is male or female. It's mental sex, either male or female. They've changed this. No, the concept is the same, but they've just changed it because of people's preconceived notions about male and female, and maybe political correctness or whatever. The I like linear versus holistic, and typically the male would be the linear thinker and the female would be the holistic thinker. So it switches. Male could be thought of as linear and female could be thought of as holistic. And if you're here, they in the story form it said male, but that's equivalent to linear. All right, so I can't think of concrete examples. This is something that involves more attention on more focus, more I guess more reading more into what's going on, being more attentive to events in the story. But basically, in order to be able to detect it, unless there are some clear examples, but basically, a linear thinker. This is only for the main character, not the protagonist or any of the other characters. Main character. Uh, a linear thinker would see cause and effect. If I do this, I want this to happen. I'm going to do this to cause that to happen. Or can see, well, if this is happening, and this clearly leads to this, then if I do this, this is going to happen. Or this problem is clearly the result of this situation, or something like that. It's very much cause and effect. And also this, therefore this. If this is, then therefore this is also true. A holistic thinker, or also known as a female thinker, a main character, would think spatially. I want to rearrange how it's all about relationships. I tend to think that's why women are more interested in relationship stories, because they're more fascinated by different variations, how people match with each other and can relate to each other and hook together, hook up together, because that's literally what the holistic thinker is all about. I want these set of conditions in the whole environment. The whole environment I want to be arranged this way. So I'm going to change, I'm going to adjust these things to have ripple effects in such a way as to have the whole environment be arranged as closely as I want. A good example, something I talked about in my other channel yesterday, is a moment in the movie Conspiracy Theory with Mel Gibson and Julia Roberts. Excellent example. They're in a car, and you can typically Julia Roberts would be playing a character with a female holistic mindset, and Mel Gibson is playing a character with clearly a linear mindset. So they're in the car, and they're being chased by a car behind them. So he's hiding in the back seat, and they're having a conversation, and he's scared. And she says, "I bet you want me to speed up and lose them." Well, that's what a man would say, or a man would think. "I'm not a man," and he says, "Yeah, I can tell." Almost kind of an quizzical look on his face, with a quizzical look on his face. So what she does, rather than speed up, because that would be linear, that would be very straight lined, linear. I want to, well, this is kind of spatial, but they're pursuing me. I've got to speed up in order to lose them. She literally rearranges the situation. She pulls over to the side and then lets the cars behind her pass by, thinking, well, whichever car doesn't want to go past them will be in a tough situation, because they'll be forced to pass her by. Otherwise, it would call attention. They would call attention to themselves, and we would know they would call attention to themselves. So that's an element of how the female mind would rearrange or alter the environment to a condition that they would want. All right, so off the top of my head, I can't think of any specific examples. Maybe you can. Next time you watch Jaws, look for examples of when Chief Brody thinks in terms of, or assesses a situation or makes decisions in terms of cause and effect, and this, therefore, that. Maybe why women, I say this kind of tongue-in-cheek, maybe why women tend to think of men as thinking so simplistically. There's kind of a joy, I think, that men feel about thinking simplistically. It's not as complicated. All right, so now we get to the 4 objective story questions. Now remember, I mentioned before, it's a contest principally between the main character through line and the objective story through line. Which one is more twisted up? That's why you have these 2 sets of 4 questions. The story driver, the objective story driver, is either action or decision. Now you're going to have both. You're going to have decisions being made. Hold off. Let me first remind you about what the objective story is. It's not the main character. It's not the impact character. It's not the subjective story. It's the objective story. And I should have explained this further. I was talking about the main character and impact character. Forgot to mention about these 2 other ones. The objective story is like the chessboard. It's in Jaws, it's about the shark, it's about the mayor, it's about Chief Brody, and it's about Quint and Hooper and all these different characters. In Star Wars, it's not about Luke Skywalker's personal relationship with his father or Obi-Wan Kenobi or something like that. It's about all different characters. It's about the rebellion and the Empire. It's about Darth Vader being in like a long arm for the Empire. It's about the stormtroopers. It's about the droids. It's all these different characters. It's about the Empire pursuing the rebels who have stolen the secret plans to the Death Star, because they're concerned about it, because the Death Star, they want those plans back. Not because they don't know how the Death Star is put together, but because the the plans indicate exactly how to destroy the Death Star at its weakest spot. So they're concerned that the rebels now have these secret plans that tell them how to destroy the Death Star. Okay, that's all what Star Wars is about. The objective story of Star Wars, that through line. All right, so you can have in the objective story, you can have actions and decisions, but the driver indicates what changes, what shifts the direction of the story at critical moments as you're watching the story. I'm so happy that this is a simple thing to explain because it's explained in other books. They use different terminology, but it's like turning points. A lot of times people say plot points or turning points in the story. Here in Dramatica, it's called the driver because it drives it. I guess because it drives the story in a certain direction. Turning points. I like turning points. I like plot points. I like chiefly the term turning points because it shifts as you're going along in the story. I guess. As you're going in the story, I had to sign in there for a moment. As you're going in the story, certain actions or certain decisions are shifting the direction of the story. So this is recording, is it? Good, 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 good. Thank goodness. I don't want to be talking all that long. Okay, and not have it be recorded. So are actions leading to decisions? Or are actions changing the course significantly in the story, or are decisions leading the course significantly? So overall, you have 5 major points when there are changes in the direction. You have, at the very beginning of the story, you have the inciting incident. That's what it's typically called. The inciting incident in the objective story, people get this confused. It has to be at the objective story level. Or in context of the objective story, some event, either decision or action, creates this problem, creates this conflict, this new conflict. Things have been peaceful before the story began. Whatever story you're telling or watching, before, like let's say here, this is where it's kind of awkward because the image I'm looking at is reversed now, but this point, before this, things were calm. People may have felt bad or something, but things had been at a standstill. And then some event happens, and then that causes a new conflict to emerge. So it's very clear in, all right, so that's the inciting incident. And then at the end of the first act, there's another event that shifts the direction of the story in a new direction. Okay, it's the inciting incident, the beginning of the story, and then in the transition from Act 1 to Act 2, and then halfway through, transition from the first half to the second half of Act 2, and then the transition from the second act to the third act, and then the final climax. Jim Hall noticed that the type of action, or the type of action relates to the objective story problem. Remember, each through line has a problem, which is one of those units in the bottom level of this periodic table, and has a theme, which is the next level up, and then a concern, which is the next level up, and then the top level would be the type of conflict. I should also mention something I didn't before, that when you're looking down like this, you have in the upper left, you have a quadrant, 4 units. The upper left is universe. That's just a label meaning the physical, something about the conflict involves something about the physical environment being stuck somehow. Uh, it's a matter. The conflict revolves around something being stuck externally in the world out there, and so that's the upper left universe, and then the diagonally the lower right is mind, and that deals with a type of conflict involving a mental state. Something is stuck. A mindset is stuck, or many people's mindset is stuck. And if you get it unstuck, then that resolves the conflict. Same way with the universe. If it becomes unstuck in the physical universe, then that resolves itself. Um, so adjacent to universe is physics, and that's the type of conflict that's in the upper right. Um, that deals with a conflict involving a process. It's not simply that something is stuck. That's not the nature. That's not the nature of the conflict. The nature of the conflict is that there's this ongoing uh, thing that's processing or in the process of happening that's causing conflict. Same way in the lower left unit, that's psychology, and that's involving a conflict about the mind, that some kind of process going on in the mind that's happening, and that's the nature of the conflict. So you can see the similarity, whereas physics rearranges or involves the rearrangement of the static universe, the psychology involves the rearrangement of things in a static mind. And there are other similarities and relationships. It's fascinating, and that gets into mathematics and psychology and so forth. But that would be too much for this video. All right, so in this case, it's very clearly Jaws. It's very clearly an action-driven story. You can have a lot of action in a decision-driven story. It's not the same thing. The actual turning points themselves must be either action or decision. Anyway, so in Jaws, you have a shark. The beginning of the story takes bites off of Chrissy, and so she is just taken underwater and hurt. She's killed. Clearly, she's killed. That's a physical action. It's a physical process. You might say that the presence of the shark means the objective story would fit into universe. Well, it's not the fact that the shark exists. It's the fact that the shark is doing something. Namely, the shark is attacking beachgoers. That's the process. It's what the shark is doing. It's causing the conflict. So it would go in physics. The objective story would go in physics. So, as I said before, if the objective story is in physics, when you're assigning the through lines at that top level, which quadrant unit goes with which through line, because we know the objective story is in physics, the subjective story, its pair through line, the subjective story must be in psychology because that's diagonal. So that means that they are both involving conflicts related to processes, not involving something that's a stuck state. It's a conflict involving something ongoing and happening. All right, so the next level down. Oh, okay. I should actually. All right, so I should mention the other examples in Jaws. So first you have Chrissy being attacked. That's clearly the shark attacking. That's a process. And then later on, when the boy goes out, ocean goers are, the beach goers are out in the ocean and so forth. And then the boy gets attacked. The shark is again attacking. It's an action, and it changes the course of the story. Now the mayor decides. Oh no, I think it was before that. Before the boy goes out into the beach, there's that town meeting that was caused by Chrissy. Notice at the beginning, Chrissy is attacked, and that's a story driver that's the inciting incident that launches the story. You have a whole bunch of actions that take place. You have Chief Brody. Well, you have a decision too. You have Chief Brody deciding to close the beach. You have the mayor deciding that that's not in his best interest. He wants the beaches kept open. Um, you have push and pull. You have the town meeting call. That's an action itself. And you have the mayor deciding to inhibit the length of time that the beaches will be closed. You have all sorts of different activities and decisions based on Chrissy being attacked. And then the boy is attacked, and then you have a whole bunch of other ones, and then you have Hooper coming to examine because of these attacks, so forth, and that more and more happens based off these turning points. And then the final act, of course, there is the part at the very end in the climactic. The climactic act is not only the shark attacking the boat, but the specific action is Chief Brody shooting and blowing up the shark with his rifle. All right, so whereas the story began with a shark attacking Chrissy, it must end with an action. You can't have plot points. If it's an action driver story, all these major points must be action. Or if it's a decision-driven story, all these must be decision-driven moments. All right, so that's the first of the objective story objective story questions. The next one is limit. It's either option lock or time lock. This may be easier to explain. The limit is how many different things. The limit is what must occur to escalate the story towards a climax. Is it time, or is it a number of options or things that must be dealt with? An option lock means you have several different things that must be dealt with. Options. I wish maybe they would pick a different term than options. It sounds like you're deciding between things, but different things that must be dealt with. A lot of stories, probably the majority of stories in a movie, the majority of movies have an option lock limit. Various different things that must be dealt with, and as they are dealt with, they are checkmarked off, and they're no longer relevant to resolving the story conflict, the objective story conflict. So kind of like in a relationship story, you have different people trying to see how they can pair up together, and you have only so many different types of combinations, and so this one won't work, that one won't work, that one won't work. So you start checking off the attempts, not the attempts themselves. You start checking off the matchups, and as the number of matchups decreases, you feel a sense that the story is moving closer and closer towards a climax to the story. So, and a time lock, that's very different. A time lock is simply a given time. You must accomplish this goal in 2 days or 48 hours, or you have 48 minutes in which to accomplish, and it can't be just in the final. It can't be the lock, whatever it is, either option lock or time lock, can't be just announced at the end of the story. It has to have been going through the course of the story. It may not be noticeable. For example, in Ghostbusters, it wasn't that noticeable until, that being an option lock story, it wasn't that noticeable until you sat back and you realized what the options were. The very beginning, what are the options? You have what are the options to get it towards this final showdown climax? Well, all the ghosts have to be released. You have to get the keymaster. You have to have the keymaster possess someone. You have to have the gatekeeper possess someone. The gatekeeper and the keymaster must get together. They must open this interdimensional portal. You must have Gozer appear. You have to have all these different things happening. But during the course of watching the story, you're not cued in on what the goal is until a good chunk of the story has already occurred. But the options have already happened. The options, the things that must be checked off have already happened. You just don't know yet the context and what's going on, but they have happened. Um, so what are the options in Jaws? Well, first they try to kill the shark or eliminate the shark from land. They close the beach. No, that's not successful. So they try to have they try and put out an award, a reward, award money or something, to have private people try and kill the shark. And there are different ways in which they can try to stop the shark from killing the beachgoers until finally the only thing they have left to do is actually go out in a boat and actually kill the shark. And even then, in that final third act, there are different things that they do to try and kill the shark. Uh, um, Hooper goes down in a cage, a shark cage, to try and harpoon or stab the shark. That doesn't happen. All these different things that happen. It comes right down to what's so nice about that. Why that thrilling moment at the end is so thrilling. It's because they've tried just about everything else one can think of until the very end. He has a rifle and he just shoots the shark and blows the shark up. All right, so the final two in the story, the objective story set of questions is outcome and judgment. This can be confusing a little bit, especially judgment. Outcome is whether it's a success or failure. I'm not talking about Chief Brody himself. I'll mention First Blood here. This is a good example. In the movie First Blood, the objective story, clearly the main character is Rambo. And people think of Rambo as this big machine guy and blows things up. That's not the first movie. The First Blood is. I'm just talking about First Blood. What happens is he goes to he's walking along the street, walking along the road, the highway actually, and he's clearly a Vietnam vet. He mentioned he had served in Vietnam, and he learns that his friend has just died of cancer from Agent Orange, and so he's sad. And the sheriff, I think he's the sheriff. In the novel, he's a police chief. In the movie, he's a sheriff, for whatever reason. All right, the sheriff stops him and then just goes into trigger mode. In fact, I'm not using First Blood as another movie example because I couldn't find the entire the entire story form that Jim Hall posted on his site. I couldn't find that yesterday, so I didn't use that as a second example. But I do remember that proaction is the problem and reaction would be the solution. The sheriff arrests him on the spot. He calls him a vagrant, and just for no good reason, he just arrests the guy, brings him into the jail cell, the police office. They brings him into the police headquarters, and they just drive this PTSD out of Rambo until Rambo just kicks in. His PTSD kicks into high gear, and he just escapes the police building. And so through the course of the rest of the movie, the police chief and the other characters just keep pursuing and using proaction, just keep hunting him down and making up lies about him, distorting the facts, distorting what happened, and just keep pushing it, Rambo, pushing at him, pushing at him. In fact, at some point, I hazard somewhere halfway through the movie, um, Rambo has set up traps, and they're basically trapped. Do you think they would catch on? Let's not bother this guy anymore. Let's just let him just go. Um, the police chief gets caught in a trap. He's stuck on a tree, and Rambo comes out and holds a knife. Notice he's not holding the blade to his neck. He's holding the safe side of the knife to his neck, and says, in so many words, "I'm warning you. Don't push me. Just let it go." And and Rambo leaves. And so Rambo says that to the police chief. So rather than the police chief say to himself, "Gee, I pushed him too far. Look, one person's died. Several dogs, I think. It's questionable about the dogs. Enough heartache. I'll just let him go." He doesn't. He's something about him just and something about him pushes him to keep pursuing Rambo, and he makes these arguments in his favor. See, that's partly what this whole Dramatica does so beautifully and helps you with so beautifully as a storyteller or as a movie consumer. It's helping you to look at the arguments that the writer is making. The writer is arguing in the mouth of Rambo. Enough is enough. Just cut it out. You won't have any more problems if you just stop doing what you're doing. And to contrast that, the police chief is arguing about the law. You fuck with the law, and sorry, I'm not one to swear, but that's what he says in the movie. People screw around with the law, and all hell breaks loose or whatever. You've got to be firm, and you can't let people get away with this. Da 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 da. And he makes up all these justifications for what he's doing, and that's causing more conflict. So in Dramatica, so the movie, because the movie is told so well and arguing these points so well, it's easy for Dramatica to calculate this using its algorithms, and some you can do in your own head, to see in these 70 different something other points about the movie, what the message of the movie is, and it's seen in all these different themes and points. So, all right, so that was First Blood. Now, the objective story is not Rambo's personal experience. The objective story is simply Rambo has escaped the law, and the sheriff is leading the law enforcement officers in pursuit of this escaped person. And so at the end of the story, I would say the objective story ends in success. It's either success or failure. In this case, I say it's a success because the goal of the story is not about Rambo's personal demons and PTSD. It's about the police chief pursuing and trying to capture. All these different people are trying to capture or are concerned about this Vietnam vet who has escaped the law. They're trying to capture him and bring him, to arrest him and put him in jail, I guess, or have a court hearing, whatever. That's for the second movie. That happens between the first and second movie, incidentally. So Rambo's personal conflict and unsettledness is about his PTSD. All right. And Rocky, I'll get to Jaws in a moment, but in Rocky, it's not about his relationship with Adrian. It's not about necessarily his family life. It's about him trying to hold out, him trying to reach the point of being in this boxing match with a world champion and being able to hold out. It's not necessarily at the end of spoiler alert. Well, I won't even bother what happens to mention what happens at the end of the story. I'll just say he gets to box with this world champion, and it's not whether he wins or loses, it's that he holds out. He goes through like all 10 rounds, whatever it is, 9 rounds or whatever, 15 rounds with this champion so that he can demonstrate to himself, prove to himself and to everybody else he's not just a bum from the streets. Or a loser. He's not a loser. He's able to compete against the best. So, so going to Jaws, it's not about Chief Brody being scared of the water. It's not about these personal people's. Well, it's not about Brody being scared of the water. It's about a shark attacking people and creating an unsafe environment for the beachgoers. So, the story outcome is either success or failure. In the case of Jaws, it is a success because the shark is blown up. It no longer is a problem for threatening the beachgoers. And in First Blood, it's about the sheriff capturing Rambo, and going off. There's a walk as the credits go, and there's a melancholy song. It's they walk off together. Clearly, Rambo's been arrested. So it's a success story, I argue, because that was the goal, to arrest Rambo, capture and arrest Rambo. Now, the next part is judgment. That's very different. So whereas the objective story is about the success or failure, judgment is about the main character, principally. Has he resolved his personal issue or not? Or has it been resolved for him or not? Clearly in First Blood, it has clearly not. He's arrested, which would make this a success story, but in the soliloquy he delivers at the end to his former commanding officer, he's talking about how nobody would help him, and he's crying out, and he talks about, well, I won't get bloody, but how his friend, he witnessed personally, he has visions of this friend from like 7 years ago, just dying gruesomely. And so he goes like this, and he's crying, and he's pouring. In fact, in the original novel, there's a different ending, and from what I remember reading, Sylvester Stallone, who played Rambo, changed it. I wonder if there's any footage of that actually filmed of the original ending. But anyway, he decides to unend himself in the novel. He pleads. There's the rifle or whatever. He pleads for the commanding officer to help him unlife himself. But in the movie, Sylvester Stallone, from what I remember, decided to change that to make way in case there are sequels. I guess because he saw potential in this. All right, so that's that. Now I get to the actual through lines themselves. Let me mention some tricks you can use to guess, do your own calculations. These are some of the algorithms I was talking about. This is still going, isn't it? Yes, okay, good, thank goodness. Okay, so for the start, to determine whether it's a start or stop story, I've already explained. When you're looking at it from bird's eye view down that top level, whether it has to be, you can see it whether it's a start or stop based on whether the objective story through line is assigned to an adjacent unit, horizontally adjacent to the main character, or vertically adjacent. If it's vertically adjacent, then it's a start story. If it's horizontally adjacent, then it's a stop story. In other words, something must stop for there to be a resolution. Either the main character has to stop something. This depends on other factors, whether it's the onus is on the objective story or the main character. But something has to stop either in the main character, stop happening, either the main character or the objective story. And a beer or doer, the difference between that, if you notice the lower two as opposed to the upper two, the lower two, mind and psychology, those are internal types of conflict. So a main character who's a beer has to occupy one of those lower two things and units, and a doer must occupy one of the upper two units. So if you have a so if you have a main character who's a beer, as in the case in Jaws, he must occupy one of the lower two ones, and because you can't have him diagonally, you can't have the objective story diagonally paired with the main character. That means that limits how many different combinations you can have. So here, the main character is in mind, which is he's in a stuck state, I suppose, because of his fear of the water. That is a stuck mental mindset. And so if he's in mind, then the impact character, who must be diagonally adjacent to the main character when you're assigning these through lines, the impact character must be in universe because it must be diagonally adjacent to him in mind, the main character in mind. So that means that the other two must be the objective story and the subjective story. Now, if he's a start character, then because he's in the lower right, then if he's a start, then the objective story can't be next to horizontally adjacent to him. It must be vertically adjacent to him because it's a start story. He must, in this case, it's him that's changing. He must work his way up. He must start doing something in order to coincide with the objective story. And that's the way I remember it. So in Jaws, he must start being less afraid of the water. He must start pursuing the shark. He must start being braver. He must begin being braver to go into the water and pursue the shark rather than just stay far behind. That's clearly a start. He has to start doing something. He has to start building up courage. All right. So as I said before, each through line has a conflict element, one of the units in each of the four levels. Let me say again. Each through line has a specific unit of conflict at each level of this, and it's a drill down. You typically start at the top with the four units. You pick one of the four units to assign to that particular through line, and then underneath that through line, underneath that unit, you have four more, and then underneath that you have four more, and so forth. So you're picking, as you're picking, going down this periodic table, you're picking which of the units in each group of four, these levels, is the conflict at that level. All right, I hope that's clear. All right, so the objective story in Jaws, the objective story is assigned to physics because, as I said before, it's what the shark is doing. It's not just the presence of the shark. And then that means the subjective story would have to be in psychology. Subjective story is the heart. The objective story is the head of the story. The subjective story is the heart of the story. That means could be just the relationship, not the two characters themselves, but the relationship between them, between the impact character and the main character. Their relationship could also involve relationships between other characters, but it has to be the same kind of conflict. It has to be the values of the units have to be the same, because ultimately what you're doing as a writer is trying to express these themes in this way, communicate my message I want to tell the audience. I want to argue to the audience, hey, this is how you deal with this kind of conflict. Or if you deal with this conflict in this way, this is what will happen. So, story, if the object of story, as this in this case is in physics, diagonally adjacent on that top level, as you can see, would be psychology. So the subject of story would be in psychology. The main character is okay, so we know the objective story. That's very clear. And the main character is start. So it can only pick mind. It's the only option available, mind, for which one to assign to the main character. And you can do it various ways, but there's one way you can tell where the main character would be assigned to. It's in mind, and so therefore the impact character must be diagonally adjacent, and that must be in universe. So you have universe and mind, that's both main and impact characters, and you have objective story and subjective story, that pairing, those are diagonally adjacent, adjacent or related. Physics and psychology. So in objective story, it's in physics. The goal, and of course there are calculations which I won't get into, but I want to say that what I'm about to say, these values aren't arbitrary. They're ways of calculating exactly what they are. Objective story, it's in physics. The goal is, or the concern is obtaining or losing, could be read either way. The opposite of, it's either obtaining something or the opposite, the losing. That's the concern of everybody. So you have the shark. You have the shark trying to obtain meals, chomping on people, obtain victims. You have, and this kind of relates to the theme level. So we were at the top with physics at the top level. One level down, you have 4. And amidst that, it's obtain. And you have, as I said, the shark trying to obtain victims or obtain food or something. And the mayor is trying to obtain votes, or each one is trying to obtain something. It comes out more clearly in the thematic level, the next level down. Below obtain, you have 4 other ones. It's self-interest, morality, morality meaning what's good for everybody, self-interest being what's your own personal self-interest, and I forget what the other 2 are, but in this case it's self-interest. What's everybody concerned about? The shark is clearly concerned with shark's own self-interest of chomping people, chomping victims, getting flesh, getting some. It implies food. I don't think they actually say food. It kind of implies that the shark is eating people, eating its victims. The mayor is clearly concerned about money and the loss of revenue going to businesses if the beach is closed. The police chief is concerned about self-interest. I'll pass on the police chief in just a moment. Quint, who's the shark hunter, professional shark hunter, is clearly interested. His own self-interest is making money. He says, "Hunt this shark. My own life is worth more than $3,000, chief, or whatever reward money they put up." He says, "I'll do it for $10,000." So he has his own sense of self-interest. He wants to make money. Plus he makes a good argument. Like, he's not going to risk his life for a low amount of money. He wants a high amount of money to make it worth his while and risking his life to be able to go out and kill the shark. And there's the businesses themselves, their self-interests in making money and keeping on a paying, as Quint calls it, a paying basis. I think that's what he calls it. And a void is the actual problem at the bottom level. So in the objective story through line, it's of these top 4, it's physics, and then within physics, one level down, it's obtain, and then within obtain, one level down, it's self-interest, and then below that, bottom level, it's avoid. Or you can read that as also as prevent. And then you have symptom of control. Symptom is adjacent to the problem, and again, this is for each through line. So symptom of control, that would mean what they're not, if the characters aren't aware or not focusing on the actual problem, it's a symptom. It's somebody characterized it as a cold. The actual problem is that you have this virus within you, but you're sneezing and coughing a lot. Those are the symptoms. You're dealing with the symptoms, and you may not be addressing the actual problem. Now, steadfast characters, here's another algorithm I'll share with you. For steadfast character, the steadfast character may or may not be, I would argue, may be aware. Other people would say they're not even aware of it. Aware of their actual problem in their own personal life. But they are very well aware of the symptoms from that problem. So they're dealing with the symptoms. A steadfast character will share the same value of symptom with the objective story symptom. So I can tell here, the objective story symptom is control, and Chief Brody is a change main character. That he's not steadfast, he's change. So the impact character is the one that will share the symptom with the objective story. And I look down here, impact character, the symptom is indeed control. The impact character is the mayor, Hooper, and Quint. I don't know exactly how control would be a symptom for them. I haven't thought through that very much, but that's the algorithm. And the change main character will share his actual problem with the problem value of the objective story. So the objective story problem is avoid, or you can also read that as prevent. Now, that should also be the main character's personal problem, which is avoid. So I've mentioned the objective story elements. The main character elements are mind at that top level, and then one level down amongst subconscious, conscious, preconscious, and memory, it's subconscious. Subconscious deals with desires, fears, the really gut level stuff. And preconscious is one of those other units that was picked, that level. Preconscious is impulsive actions, impulsivity. Memory is obviously memory. And conscious is making decisions, very much current level, in present time, making decisions. I'm debating whether to elaborate further on why you have those elements arranged the way they are. I guess I would make this too long of a video, but I'll just say that if you look at the chart, if you look at the chart, memory is located in the same spot in mind as past is in universe. And subconscious is located in the same spot in mind as obtaining is in physics, or future is in universe. I'll leave it at that. There is a relationship. It's the same kind of concept in the mind. It's just that the mind puts this in different contexts. Something very gut level, very internal, like subconscious, relates easily to obtaining. If you're in physics, you're desiring something. It's all about desire in your mind, but in physics, it's about obtaining. And in your mind, memory is all about remembering the past, and in the context of universe out there, it's about the past. I hope that's clear. So the main character is mind, and then below that subconscious, and then below that the theme is closure. He wants closure. Closure is the opposite of things. Um, I think it's openness. Openness versus closure. In this case, it's closure. Closure relates in Dramatica to things being resolved and put to bed, put to rest. I suppose in his case, that's his fear of the water. He wants it put to rest, or the theme. It's not necessarily what he wants, it's the conflict itself. It dwells on putting something to rest, putting something to bed, ending it. I want closure. I want this finished. It's about the subconscious, clearly his fear of the water. And of course, avoid is next level down. Avoid, or not so much prevent, but avoid. He's avoiding the water. And that should be, he should have closure on that problem about having fear of the water and having to avoid it. And then the impact character is in universe, future, openness, and hinder, and the symptom of control. And the last one is the subjective story, psychology, becoming, commitment, temptation. Oh, it's commitment, and then temptation. Temptation is the problem in this relationship, or these relationships amongst characters, chiefly between the neophyte, which would be Chief Brody, and the sometimes, other times it's not, I imagine, and the professional. And the symptom is control. All right, so rather than this being going on very much longer, I do want to say that at each a typical story, a typical movie. Anyway, all right, that's one story form, and I should say that in movies like Empire Strikes Back and Raiders of the Lost Ark, and some other longer movies, I think The Dark Knight also has this too. You can have more than one story form. A story form simply means that you have all four through lines arguing a certain conflict from these different perspectives, but it's one story form. Now you can have more than one story form. You sometimes, if you have more, you don't want to overcrowd the movie. You want just one other story form, and the story will switch back and forth between these two story forms, but they're very different. Something that I needed to get a handle on at first, trying to understand Dramatica. They're very, in some sense, they're very different stories. In Empire Strikes Back, one story form is about Darth Vader being the protagonist and the Empire pursuing the rebels, principally Han Solo in the Millennium Falcon. That's one story. That's the objective story of this one story form. And I think it's Princess Leia and Han Solo are the relationship storyline, and Han Solo. Good. Okay, Han Solo is a very important point. Han Solo in Empire Strikes Back is saying at the very beginning he recognizes Princess Leia has an attraction towards him, and she denies it. She is in denial, as they say, that she has affection for him, and he keeps arguing. Come on, let it out, let it out, let it out. She showed her true feelings for me in the South Gate or whatever it was, South Tunnel or whatever. And she keeps denying it. I don't know what you're talking about, blah, 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 blah. He keeps saying, I think you do, I think you do. And then over time, she kisses him on the cheek, and then gradually she bends and she succumbs and she starts warming up to him. And then, so he's steadfast. And you can really tell that he's the steadfast one because near the end, when he's frozen carbonite, she finally says, she's witnessing it, she's scared, like she has this big look of fright on her face. She says, I love you. And he says, I know. Now, from what I've read, the original line was, I love you too, or I love you back to her. But it doesn't fit with the scene because he's steadfast. What the actor was told, from what I've read, the actor felt that, or somebody there didn't feel that the line was working well. I love you back. It just didn't hold the scene. So Harrison Ford was told from what I read, he was told to blurt out the thing that comes to mind. He said, "I know," but that fits because that confirms that he's a steadfast character. He's always known that she had feelings for him, and as a steadfast character, he's been trying to make an impact on her to get her to admit to her feelings towards him. And then in the end, she's the one that changed. She's been changing. She's been bending slightly until she says finally, "I love you."